Episode 1, The Strange Stone. Life in the quiet village of Oakhaven was always simple, until it wasn't. Kael, a boy known more for tripping over his own feet than for any grand deeds, was just helping his grandfather clear the old storage shed. Dust flew everywhere, filling the air with forgotten memories. Tucked away in a rusty chest, beneath piles of mildewed cloths, his hand brushed against something smooth and cold. It wasn't wood or metal. It was a stone unlike any he'd ever seen. It shimmered faintly, catching the dim light filtering through the grimy window. He picked it up, curiosity overriding caution. As his fingers closed around the stone, it began to pulse with a soft inner light. A warmth spread through his hand, then up his arm. And suddenly, the ancient symbols carved into its surface glowed bright blue, vibrating in his grip. Follow for episode 2.
The stone pulsed bright blue, vibrating in his hand. A strange hum filled the shed, making the very air feel thick and heavy. Kael felt a surge of energy rush up his arm, tingling like thousands of tiny needles. The warmth from the stone intensified, spreading through his chest, making his heart pound. The ancient symbols on the stone began to shift and swirl within the light, no longer static carvings but fluid patterns. He tried to drop it, but his fingers wouldn't obey. It was stuck, fused to his palm by some unseen force. The light grew blindingly bright, forcing his eyes shut. He heard a distant whisper like wind through dry leaves, but it seemed to come from inside his head. The hum rose to a screech, and then silence and cold. Follow for episode 3. The screech died, leaving behind an unnerving silence and the lingering chill. Kael stumbled back, collapsing onto the dusty floor of the shed, coughing. His vision swam, dark spots dancing before his eyes from the blinding light. He gasped for air, his lungs burning. He looked down at his hand, expecting to see the stone, perhaps charred or broken. But it wasn't there. It was gone. Did he drop it? He scrambled frantically across the floorboards, searching through the dust and cobwebs, kicking up forgotten debris. He searched every corner, every shadow. Nothing. The stone had simply vanished. But as he knelt there, panting, he noticed something else. A faint tingling sensation remained in his palm where the stone had been. And when he finally managed to stand and look out the shed door towards the familiar village path, the air itself seemed to shimmer like heat haze, only it was cold. Follow for episode 4. Outside the shed, the air didn't just shimmer, it felt strangely cold despite the sun. Kael walked out slowly, still feeling that faint, persistent tingling in his palm. He looked around the familiar farmyard. The old oak tree seemed sharper. The colors of the fields looked slightly different, more intense somehow. Everything felt both the same and subtly, unnervingly wrong. He saw his grandfather hobbling towards the house carrying a sack of potatoes. "Grandpa," Kael called out, his voice a little shaky. "The stone and the air, it's all weird." His grandfather paused, frowning, wiping sweat from his brow. "Weird, Kael, it's just a fever from that shed. Get some water." He dismissed it with a wave, turning back to his task. Kael felt a pang of frustration. He looked back at the spot where the stone vanished. The tingling in his hand suddenly intensified, and then he heard it again, that faint, rustling whisper. But this time it wasn't just noise. It was a voice whispering his name. Follow for episode 5. The whisper called his name, faint but clear, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Kael spun around, searching for the source. Was it the wind? No, the air was still. Was it the trees? They rustled, but the sound was different. The voice was cold, ancient, and filled with a strange sadness. It spoke again, a string of words he couldn't understand, a language that felt older than the village itself. But despite not knowing the words, a sense of dread washed over him. It felt like a warning, or maybe an invitation. He looked towards the edge of the village, towards the ancient forest that bordered Oakhaven. The forest everyone avoided after dark. The tingling in his hand grew stronger, pulling him, urging him towards the shadowed tree line. His feet felt heavy, yet they wanted to move, compelled by the unseen force and the whispering voice. Follow for episode 6. The voice called his name, pulling him relentlessly towards the dark edge of the forest. Kael tried to turn away, to go back to the safety of the village, but his feet felt heavy, like they belonged to someone else. The tingling in his palm wasn't just a tingle anymore. It was a throbbing ache, a constant pressure guiding his steps. As he neared the trees, the cheerful sounds of the village faded, replaced by an eerie silence. The air grew colder, and the light seemed to dim, even though the sun was still high. The whispers grew louder, swirling around him, no longer just his name, but a chorus of indistinct voices urging him on. He reached the line of ancient, gnarled trees, the entrance like a gaping maw. Taking a deep breath, his hand throbbing, Kael stepped across the threshold, and the world changed. Follow for episode 7. The blue light pulsed, drawing Kael deeper into the silent, ancient forest. The throbbing in his palm intensified, a silent guide. The air grew thick with unseen energy. Whispers swirled around him, confusing and urgent. He pushed through gnarled roots and glowing fungi, following the path of brightest moss. The trees seemed to watch him, their forms shifting in the twilight. He felt a growing sense of anticipation and fear. Ahead, the canopy opened slightly, revealing a clearing bathed in the ethereal blue glow. He stepped into the clearing. In the center, the moss formed a glowing circle, and within it, the air shimmered and cracked with raw power. The whispers converged into a single, deafening voice that wasn't whispering anymore. Follow for episode 9. The voice wasn't whispering now. It was a resonant boom that seemed to shake the very ground, despite only existing in Kael's mind. The glowing circle of moss in the clearing pulsed violently. The air in the center shimmered and swirled like water, but solid. The throbbing in Kael's hand reached a fever pitch, burning hot against his skin. He stared into the swirling air, hypnotized. The booming voice spoke words he couldn't understand, yet their meaning was somehow conveyed directly into his mind. "The time is nigh. The seal weakens. Claim your heritage." Suddenly, a shape began to form within the swirling air, solidifying out of the light and energy. It was metallic, ancient, covered in the same symbols that had been on the stone, and it was familiar. Follow for episode 10. The shape in the swirling air solidified further, resolving into an object Kael recognized with a jolt of shock. It was a key, an intricately carved key, forged from a dark, unknown metal, covered in the same glowing blue symbols that had been on the stone. It floated in the air, pulsing with light. The booming voice spoke again. "The key of ages unlocks the past, shapes the future. Your blood remembers. Reach." The key drifted slowly towards him, beckoning. The throbbing in his hand seemed to synchronize with its pulse. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to flee this strange, ancient place and the terrifying power it contained. But the tingling, the throbbing, the voice, they compelled him forward. His feet moved on their own, stepping towards the floating key, his hand outstretched, the burning in his palm intensifying with every step. Follow for episode 11. His hand reached out, compelled by the voice and the burning in his palm. His fingers closed around the key of ages. It was cold, yet vibrated with immense power. The moment he touched it, the booming voice in his head roared, "It is done." The glowing moss in the clearing flared, the swirling air vanished, and the key in his hand pulsed with a blinding white light. Kael cried out, collapsing to his knees as a wave of energy surged through him, stronger than when he first touched the stone. Images flooded his mind, not his own memories, but flashes of ancient times, of the village, of the forest, of people he didn't know, speaking that same ancient language. He saw the stone again, not lost, but absorbed asterisk. The key wasn't just a key, it was a vessel, a connection, to something vast and old. The white light faded, leaving him breathless, trembling, but the key remained in his hand, cool and heavy. Follow for episode 12. The key felt heavy and real in his hand, no longer just a vision. The forest was silent once more, the strange energy dissipated, leaving only the eerie twilight and the glowing moss. Kael stumbled back to his feet, the ancient vision still echoing in his mind, a chaotic jumble of faces, places, and whispers. What did it all mean? The key of ages, unlocking the past, his heritage. He, Kael, the boy who tripped over everything, had a heritage connected to this ancient power. He looked at the key, its symbols now glowing with a soft, steady blue light. He felt different, not physically stronger, but more aware. The forest didn't feel as hostile. It felt familiar. He knew with a certainty that chilled him that taking the key had changed everything. He had to get back to the village, back to his grandfather. But as he turned to leave the clearing, a low, guttural growl echoed from the shadows of the trees. He wasn't alone. Follow for episode 13. A low, guttural growl rumbled from the shadows, freezing Kael in place. His heart hammered against his ribs. He wasn't alone. The feeling of familiarity with the forest vanished, replaced by primal terror. He gripped the key of ages tightly. Its glow offered little comfort against the unseen threat. The growl came again, closer this time, accompanied by the snapping of twigs. Something large was moving towards him through the dense undergrowth. He couldn't see it, but he could feel its presence, a cold, malevolent energy that was wrong. It wasn't a normal animal. This was something from the ancient whispers, something guarding the forest's secrets. Panic seized him. He had no weapon, no way to defend himself. The creature lunged from the trees, a hulking shadow with glowing red eyes. Follow for episode 14. Glowing red eyes fixed on him, the creature burst from the trees. It was massive, covered in shaggy, dark fur, with razor-sharp claws and teeth bared in a silent snarl. It looked like a wolf, but twisted, corrupted, infused with dark energy. Its eyes weren't just red, they seemed to hold ancient malice. Kael stumbled back, tripping over a root, the key of ages still clutched in his hand. There was nowhere to run in time. The creature lunged, a horrifying blur of fur and teeth. He squeezed his eyes shut, bracing for the impact, but it didn't come. Instead, he felt a jolt, a surge of heat from the key. The glowing blue symbols on the key, and now on his palm where the stone had been, flared with brilliant white light, creating a shimmering barrier around him. Just as the creature's claws scraped against it, sparks flying. The barrier held, but it pulsed and flickered. Follow for episode 15. The barrier of light pulsed and flickered under the creature's relentless assault. The monster snarled, its red eyes burning with frustrated rage, raking its claws against the shield, trying to find a weakness. Kael watched in terrified awe, realizing the key, the stone, whatever this power was, had just saved his life. The energy draining from him to maintain the shield was immense, making his head swim. He knew this wouldn't hold forever. He needed to escape, to somehow get past this guardian. As the creature paused, gathering itself for another lunge, the symbols on Kael's hand flared again, and a thought, clear as day, entered his mind. Will it? Push it back? It wasn't the booming voice from before, but the calmer, ancient whisper. He focused, channeling his fear, his desperate will to survive through the key. The shield pulsed, not just deflecting now, but expanding. Follow for episode 16. He willed it, focused his raw desperation, and the light shield didn't just expand. It surged outwards like a shockwave. The creature, caught off guard mid-lunge, was hit by the wave of pure energy. It roared in pain, a high-pitched, unnatural sound, its fur singed, its form momentarily highlighted against the gloom. It was thrown backwards, crashing through the undergrowth with a tangle of snapping branches and disturbed earth. The attack had worked, but Kael felt utterly drained, collapsing back onto the ground, the key clattering beside him. The shield vanished, leaving the clearing open once more. The creature was hurt, but not defeated. He could hear it stirring in the bushes, growling low, a promise of retribution. He had a few precious moments. He scrambled for the key, his hands shaking, knowing he had to get out of this forest, back to the village, and figure out what or who he had become. Follow for episode 17. With the creature temporarily repelled, Kael snatched up the key of ages, his heart still pounding like a drum against his ribs. He didn't waste a second. Ignoring the exhaustion that weighed him down, he scrambled to his feet and ran, not back the way he came, but deeper into the forest, towards what felt like the path the whispering voice had initially pulled him. He could hear the creature recovering, its growls growing louder closer. He needed to put distance between them. The forest floor was treacherous, roots and stones threatening to trip him at every turn, but the faint blue glow of the moss seemed to light the fastest way. He ran until his lungs burned and his legs ached, the ancient trees blurring past him. Just when he thought he couldn't take another step, he burst out of the dense trees into a less overgrown area and saw something that made him stop dead. Follow for episode 18. He stopped dead, not from exhaustion, but from sheer astonishment. Ahead of him, bathed in the faint twilight filtering through the less dense canopy, stood not just trees, but structures. Ruins. Ancient stone walls covered in moss and vines, parts of buildings long crumbled to dust, but still standing enough to show they were once magnificent. This wasn't just a forest, it was a lost city. The symbols on the key of ages and his hand pulsed in sync with the strange energy radiating from the ruins. The whispers returned, stronger here, no longer fragmented, but forming coherent words in that ancient tongue, words he now somehow understood. They spoke of Ethelgard, the city of whispers, a place of learning and power hidden for centuries. The voice spoke of his ancestors, keepers of the key, protectors of the city. And then it spoke of a great danger, sealed away within these ruins, stirring. Follow for episode 19. The whispers in his mind were now clear, guiding him through the ruins of Ethelgard, the city of whispers. They spoke of Ethelgard's fall, not to war or time, but to a great evil, sealed away within its deepest chambers. The Key of Ages was the key to that seal, both to keep it closed and terrifyingly to open it. The whispers urged him forward, not towards the village, but towards the heart of the ruins, towards the source of the sealed danger. His ancestors' duty, they explained, was to ensure the seal remained unbroken. He felt a pull, a sense of responsibility he'd never known. He was Kael, the village boy, but now he was also a keeper of ancient secrets. As he moved deeper into the city, the ruins grew more intact, leading towards a massive stone structure at the city's center. The air here was thick with power, and the faint blue glow from the moss was almost blinding. And from within the central structure, he heard a faint rhythmic pulsing, like a dark beating heart. Follow for episode 20. The dark pulsing grew stronger as Kael approached the massive central structure. It was a temple of some kind, its stone walls covered in intricate carvings and the familiar blue-glowing symbols. The entrance was a huge stone archway, but it was blocked by a solid wall of shimmering, dark energy. This was the seal. The air crackled with contained power, a palpable sense of immense, ancient evil pressed against the barrier. The whispers intensified, focusing on the seal. They explained that the guardian creature he'd encountered wasn't trying to harm him. It was trying to stop anyone from reaching the seal. It was a test, perhaps, a final line of defense, but why guide him here only to block his way? The whispers then pointed to a specific spot on the shimmering barrier, a focal point where the energy seemed weakest. The key. Its purpose? The Key of Ages in his hand throbbed, its blue light matching the symbols on the barrier. He understood. The key didn't just unlock the past, it interacted with the seal itself. Follow for episode 20. The whispers guided his hand, lifting the Key of Ages towards the shimmering barrier. The key's blue light flared, reacting to the dark energy of the seal. As the symbols on the key aligned with the symbols on the barrier, a section of the dark energy began to recede, forming an opening just large enough for him to pass through. It wasn't an unlocking, but a temporary manipulation of the seal's energy. The dark pulsing from within the temple grew louder, more eager. The whispers warned him this opening was temporary, and stepping through would truly commit him to whatever lay beyond. The guardian growled nearby, a reminder of the danger outside. Taking a shaky breath, the weight of his sudden heritage pressing down on him, Kael stepped through the shimmering opening into the heart of the sealed temple. The dark energy closed behind him with a chilling hiss. Follow for episode 22. The shimmering seal hissed shut behind him, plunging the interior of the temple into near total darkness, broken only by the faint blue glow from the Key of Ages and the symbols on his hand. The air inside was heavy, cold, and filled with a suffocating sense of oppressive dread. The dark pulsing was deafening here, vibrating through the stone floor and into his bones. He could feel the presence of the sealed evil, vast and ancient, like a monstrous beast stirring in its sleep. The whispers were chaotic now, fragments of warnings and ancient pleas. Do not awaken, reinforce the seal. The price? He stumbled forward, guided by the key's light, into the temple's main chamber. It was a vast, circular room, and in its center, a colossal stone altar pulsed with the same dark energy. Chains of light etched with symbols extended from the altar, anchoring something unseen below. And atop the altar, bathed in dark energy, lay another key. Follow for episode 23. On the altar, bathed in pulsing dark energy, lay not another key, but a mirror image of the Key of Ages he held. Except this one was forged from a dark, obsidian-like material, glowing with malevolent red light instead of blue. The dark key, the whispers screamed in his mind, a chorus of frantic warnings. Do not touch it! This was the heart of the seal, and the other key was tied to the sealed evil itself. Touching it would be disastrous. The dark pulsing emanated from the altar and the dark key, radiating pure negativity. The whispers explained that the original keepers used the blue Key of Ages to create and maintain the seal, binding the evil with light. The dark key was a focal point for the trapped entity, a constant pressure against the barrier. He had to reinforce the seal, not break it. But how? He looked at the Key of Ages in his hand, then at the dark key on the altar. The whispers grew calmer, sadder. The balance must be maintained. There was a way, a sacrifice needed, and he suddenly understood the terrifying price. Follow for episode 24. The whispers spoke of balance, of maintaining the seal. They explained the original keepers bound the evil with their own life force, channeling it through the Key of Ages to fuel the light barrier. Each generation added to the seal, a lineage of protectors. Now it was his turn. The terrifying price? He had to channel his own life force, his own light, into the Key of Ages, strengthening the seal around the dark key and the evil it contained. It wouldn't kill him immediately, but it would drain him, weaken him, bind him to this temple, just as his ancestors had been. The Whispers offered a choice. Flee now, let the seal eventually fail and unleash the ancient evil upon Oakhaven and the world, or embrace his heritage, pay the price, and become the next keeper. The dark key on the altar pulsed malevolently, almost tempting him with dark power. He gripped the Key of Ages, its familiar blue light a stark contrast. His village, his grandfather, he couldn't let them be destroyed. With newfound resolve, Kael stepped towards the altar. Follow for episode 25. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Kael placed the Key of Ages into a small indentation on the altar, directly opposite the dark key. The moment the blue key settled into place, both keys flared with intense light, the Key of Ages with brilliant white, the dark key with searing red. The symbols on the altar, the chains of light, and the symbols on Kael's hand all glowed brightly. A powerful surge of energy coursed through him, originating from the Key of Ages, drawing from the ancient power within the temple, but also, drawing from him, it was like being plugged into a cosmic current. He felt his own energy, his very essence being siphoned, channeled into the altar to reinforce the seal around the dark, pulsing heart beneath. The Whispers were a soothing chorus now, acknowledging his sacrifice. The dark energy around the altar seemed to shrink, the pulsing less aggressive. He was doing it, but the drain was immense, leaving him weak, the world starting to gray out at the edges. Follow for episode 26. The draining sensation intensified, making Kael sway on his feet. His vision swam, the vibrant colors of the temple fading to a dull gray. He could feel his strength ebbing away, flowing into the altar, into the Key of Ages, reinforcing the light chains that bound the ancient evil. The Whispers grew fainter, like they were moving away. He was succeeding, the seal was holding stronger, but the cost was everything. He wondered if he would even be able to stand when this was over, or if it ever would be over. Was he now bound here forever like the keepers before him? He looked at the dark key, its red glow now slightly dimmer, less dominant than the white light from the Key of Ages. A small victory, but the darkness within the temple still felt vast, waiting. He squeezed his eyes shut, focusing on his grandfather's face on the quiet peace of Oakhaven. This was for them. As his knees buckled, ready to give out, he heard a new asterisk sound from the entrance, distinct from the temple's energy. A familiar voice was calling his name. Follow for episode 27. Through the haze of exhaustion, Kael heard it again. Kael! It was his grandfather's voice, filled with worry coming from the direction of the sealed entrance. How did he get past the Guardian? How did he even find this place? Kael tried to call back, to warn him to stay away, but only a raspy whisper escaped his lips. The connection to the altar, to the seal, held him fast, draining him. He couldn't move. The dark energy around the altar pulsed with renewed vigor, sensing the intrusion, sensing another potential source of energy. The Whispers, now distant, seemed panicked. Intruder! Danger! The seal, his grandfather's footsteps grew closer, echoing in the silent temple. Kael watched in horror as the shimmering dark barrier at the entrance began to waver, not opening but thinning, allowing glimpses of the outside. And then his grandfather stumbled through, his eyes wide with shock at the sight of Kael on his knees before the glowing altar, and the terrifying presence in the room. Follow for episode 28. His grandfather stood frozen, his eyes darting from Kael to the glowing altar, to the dark key, to the oppressive darkness filling the room. He looked frail, lost, utterly out of place in this ancient, terrifying temple. Kael, what is this? He gasped, his voice trembling. Kael couldn't answer, still bound and drained by the seal. The dark energy around the altar pulsed faster, the sealed evil sensing two sources of light now. The Whispers were frantic. More power must reinforce. His grandfather took a tentative step forward. Kael, we need to go. As he neared the altar, the symbols on his own, aged hands, faint marks Kael had never noticed before, began to glow with a soft blue light, identical to the symbols on Kael, the Key of Ages, and the altar. The Whispers shifted, a new understanding flowing into Kael's mind. His grandfather, he wasn't just a villager. He was the previous keeper. The heritage passed down the line but skipped a generation, waiting for the right moment for the stone to be found. With a look of grim determination, his grandfather reached out his hand, not towards Kael, but towards the Key of Ages on the altar. Follow for episode 29. With a look of grim determination, his grandfather reached towards the Key of Ages on the altar. His glowing hand hovered over the key. The whispers in Kael's mind were now a dual chorus, his own exhausted thoughts mixing with his grandfather's clearer intention. He understands. The transfer. Finish the seal. His grandfather wasn't pulling the key out. He was adding his own energy, his own remaining life force to the connection. A surge of power, brighter and warmer than Kael's own, flowed from his grandfather into the Key of Ages. The light chains around the dark key pulsed with renewed strength. The oppressive darkness in the temple receded slightly. Kael felt the draining sensation lessen, replaced by a shared burden. His grandfather had taken on part of the sacrifice. "Get up, Kael," his grandfather said, his voice strained but firm. "We do this together. This is our heritage." He grasped Kael's hand, pressing it back onto the Key of Ages. The connection solidified, 2 generations of keepers, side by side, fueling the ancient seal. Follow for episode 30. 2 generations, hands joined on the Key of Ages, pouring their essence into the seal. The temple filled with a blinding white light as the Key of Ages pulsed with immense power. The dark key shrieked, its red glow diminishing under the onslaught of pure, lineage-fueled energy. The light chains around the altar snapped taut, binding the ancient evil tighter than ever before. Kael felt the last vestiges of his strength ebb away, but the warmth from his grandfather's hand, the shared purpose, kept him standing. The whispers were a final, soft benediction. "Well done, keepers." The seal holds. For a time, the light faded, leaving them weak but alive, the temple silent except for their ragged breathing. The dark key was dim, the pulsing almost imperceptible. The seal was secure for now. Kael looked at his grandfather, who gave a weak but proud smile. They had done it. The village was safe. The forest's whispers had led Kael to his destiny, a legacy of sacrifice and guardianship he now shared. The adventure wasn't over. It had just begun. Follow for more such stories.